you're back on camera. Okay, so Southern colonies. Southern colonies, an overview of the culture of the Southern colonies. There's where we get into our plantation societies, okay? Big, huge farm, and slave labor is needed. Yeah. Anyone ever been to a Tidewater region? You know, how many people have been to the beach? I bet you have. What do you have to pass in order to get to the beach?
Sand.
Well, yeah, you definitely sand. You ever drive to the area and you see that water swampy and it stinks?
No.
Yeah, that's your Tidewater area. So water gets in there and it gets trapped, fish die, they rot, and it's just stinky. Makes great farming though, okay? So in those areas, we're going to have big plantations and we're going to grow a lot of rice. And if you're a slave, you definitely don't want to be a slave in that area because, you know, that nasty water, and you've got gators, you've got snakes, you've got malaria, right? So you're hoping you don't get sold to a rice plantation.
You got Ebola.
Sugar cane.
No, that's down in the West Indies.
Would you rather be in the rice or
Oh, yeah, I would probably rather be in the rice than the sugar cane, but
why? What did they do to people there?
and the sugar cane down farther in the Bahamas, they just worked you and worked you and worked you till basically they worked you out and you just
Died.
Okay, so the South.
Is that a
One of the first rebellions in the South by Englishmen. Remember I told you that in the beginning we really didn't have slavery, we had an indentured servant program, right? So people would come over if they were poor and they would be sign a contract for indentured servitude, and after 4 to 7 years they would be free. And the idea was that they would get their own land. The problem was by the time 7 years passed, all the good land was taken. And so those people were pushed west. And once they were pushed west, they had to clear their land, they had to fight off natives, and people closer to the coast, closer to the Tidewater, there was a government and there was infrastructure set up, and so they had protection too. Here they didn't. And so the indentured servants who became free would petition the government and say, you need to help us out here. The natives, you know, it's not safe, we've got crappy land, we're paying taxes just like the people closer to the coastline, but we're not getting the same benefits. And the House of Burgess, specifically in Virginia, kind of brushed them off and ignored them. And so Bacon got together with a bunch of others and decided to attack the House of Burgess. Now he becomes ill and he passes away actually before they attack the House of Burgess, but everyone else still does.
Why does everybody die before they attack?
Because it was rough to live back then.
That'd be horrible. Like clean this whole thing for like 2 years.
Bacon,
Then,
the food,
like rob a bank and then you die right before you rob a bank.
Okay, so his supporters went ahead and attacked the House of Burgess. They lose, and as a result, the government executes the ones that survive. Okay, now we talk about this because the king kind of looks at that, and the king says, ooh, maybe I should get more involved in what's going over in the colonies. And the king begins to send officials over to keep an eye on people and try to be more involved in what's happening. Okay? In the South, as the plantations grow bigger, they definitely see a rise of slavery, and we talked about why slaves don't join together, right? And overtake the Europeans, because if it's unsuccessful, you're probably going to die, right? Or they might punish your family instead. Some in the 1700s, in some areas, there were more slaves than there were white individuals. And as a result, in one particular area, in 1739, the slaves did try to uprise. Okay? They were able to overtake the overseers of a plantation. They killed them and stole their guns. And they started marching south, banging on whatever they could find. Remember, we banged on the jawbones and the other stuff. Yeah, the deer antlers. Anyway, so they're marching south, screaming freedom, 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 trying to get other slaves to join them. Before it was over, by nightfall, they had burned 7 plantations and killed 20 whites. But still, it wasn't enough, because by nightfall, other individuals had joined the white population, and the ones that weren't shot were later executed. I have to look up the specific spot again. I thought it happened in Virginia, but I'll have to look that up. The reason I mention it though is because remember how we talked about those slave laws? They got really strict after the Stonewall Rebellion. Very, very strict. Okay, the South. You basically had two types of plantations. You had the highlands and the lowlands. We've already talked about the lowlands down in the Tidewater area. Swampy, you're going to grow rice. And in the highlands, yeah, they grew what was called indigo, and it's a dye that turns material this really pretty blue. So the cash crops for the South, this is a test question, are indigo, rice, and tobacco. Okay? And yes, the South did grow cotton. That's going to come into play a little bit later in history. Their big money makers in the 1700s are rice, tobacco, and indigo.
But you said cotton.
I said cotton will come into play later.
Oh.
Specific colonies of the South, Maryland. Remember, Maryland was founded by Lord Baltimore. It was a place for Catholics because most colonists didn't like Catholics because they thought they sympathized with Spain. But Lord Baltimore said, if you're Catholic, come to Maryland. We won't pick on you. As a matter of fact, he petitioned the king for one of the first laws in the New World that said you cannot pick on someone or persecute them based upon their religion. Now, this stood for about 5 years, and then the people of the Americas were like, the king's thousands of miles away. We'll just do what we want anyway. Okay. But it was one of the first attempts to try to get rid of discrimination in the Americas.
It's kind of like whenever the teacher leaves the classroom, everybody's just like,
Yeah,
I think nobody
exactly.
just parks.
The difference is I'm not thousands of miles away, so if I come back in and catch you, you're busted. Okay?
Yeah, Dylan.
Wait,
I
did
would
it say
scream that
gone?
whenever teachers
Did
in
it
the
say after
classroom. I'm like,
Colin gone?
Yeah. About 5 years later, the colonists are like, we don't want to follow this. And so they did away with the law. But it's going to come back into play later in history. Right? Today, a company cannot say they're not going to hire you based upon your religion.
So they can do it in
They just have to keep their mouth shut, right? Carolinas. The King of England in 1640 is overthrown, and a group of individuals take over England, and the king's brother is able to get enough support that he gets control back. As a result, he rewards the people who supported him, okay, by giving them land in the New World. And that's where the Carolinas come in. But it proves to be too much for that group of his 8 friends, and so they split it between North Carolina and South Carolina.
You only had 8 supporters?
Well, they had more, but these were the real leaders that really helped get things together to get the royal family back in charge of England.
We're gonna go over World War I.
No, we won't get to it. We're going to stop right after the Civil War. Okay, and then Georgia. Remember, Georgia is our colony for our debtors and our criminals. Okay, so if you're in England and you owe someone a bunch of money and you don't have it to pay, prior to Georgia, you would go to debtor's prison. But Oglethorpe, James Oglethorpe, comes up with an idea that says, hey, instead of crowding our prisons with these people, because obviously they're not murderers, right? We'll give them a second chance, and we're going to send them to Georgia. Now, a couple of things here. Number one, you can't be Catholic. Somebody help me out. Why can't you be Catholic and live in Georgia?
Religion.
Yes,
Oh, well,
Spain. Yes, Spain has control of what is now Florida, and so they're afraid if you're Catholic and you go to Georgia, you'll sympathize with Spain and they'll come up and take that territory. Okay. Also, Oglethorpe in the beginning says that it must be small subsistence farming, but after the individuals get there and they see how rich Carolina gets with plantations, they're like, nah, forget you. And you're going to see plantations form in Georgia as well.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Oh, I took the electricity one out.
Nope.
Be jealous of Carolina, so we do World War II.
So that's the middle colonies and the southern colonies. We're going to go ahead and do the assignment, page 90. And the rest of the week looks like this. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the back country, the Appalachian Mountains, and the Scots-Irish. And then you're going to do a brochure trying to persuade me to move to a particular colony. Thursday you'll get your study guide. Friday we'll go over it. Monday we'll do a review game, and Tuesday will be the test.
So did we do everything on page 90?
So, yeah.